This is part 2 of the future of publishing and what this means for designers. I finished the first part of this lecture with the idea that the book is not a contained or finite object. It is part of a larger network. Books have always been part of a network, but they have not themselves been networked. I'm going to now talk through examples of people and companies experimenting with what a book is and might be in a digital age. First, The Literary Platform is a London-based online magazine that deals with the intersection between books and technology. Set up in 2009 by Sophie Rochester, the site is a treasure chest of projects, apps, enhanced ebooks, games and websites with a literary slant. Alongside the magazine, Sophie, who has a background in commercial publishing, formed a consultancy business, attracting a collection of like-minded folk. TLP Collective work with publishers, academic institutions and other organisations to research and run workshops around the impact of technology on writing and publishing. The Publishing Lab has a more academic slant with essays and longer critique of experimental book projects. Co-founded by Alberto Hernandez and Maria Serrano, originally as a Facebook page, the Publishing Lab has a more direct manifesto. From their website, I quote, "We believe that 21st century narratives must both demand and create savage readers, not tame readers. We think this makes good training for being able to read all social narratives and the real world with a critical stance. We don't think textual hybridization is the only way to do this, but we think it's a good way to do it. In the hands of a designer, writer, or editor who is humble, sharp, and generous, multimodal narratives will become useful training tools for the savage readers our society is so much in need of." So when they say multimodal, they mean something that is in several different modes. So the verbal is one mode, the visual is another mode, but we could also look at being online versus in print as being different modes. So we deal with multimodal texts all the time. What's most interesting to me about this manifesto is that they bring the designer into the fold, in the hands of a designer, writer, or editor. As a book designer, this is a great call to action. In my commercial design practice, I'm usually not brought in onto a publishing project until right towards the end, when the manuscript has been written and marketing and publishing have decided where they want to market it. Being part of the early stage of a publication project really appealed to me and was part of the reason I came back to university to study further and undertake research. Stepping into this new publishing landscape, designers have an opportunity to shift from the end of the production process to the very start of the content creation phase of a book project. Visual Editions, established by Anna Gerbert and Britt Iverson, they're based in London. They established Visual Editions to push boundaries around innovation and storytelling. Their website reads, "Everything we do is about telling stories." Whether it's connecting new generations to innovative books worth reading on their mobiles with Google Creative Lab, creating a moment of calm at the busiest shopping time of the year with COS, demonstrating adaptive technology with a story that changes to readers' surroundings for Mercedes-Benz, or bringing bedtime stories for grown-ups into hotel rooms with Ace Hotel. So those are a list of projects and partners that they've worked with. They say, "We know how to connect with audiences through the power of stories." Have a look at both their books, the print section that they do, and editions at play, which are the digital or multimodal editions that they do. In particular, look at the books section, because even though they're print books, they often have very unusual and highly expensive finishes, such as Tree of Codes by Jonathan Safran Foer, where every page is an individual die cut. So getting in on this, I'm just going to talk about how I came into kind of setting up my own press in a digital publishing landscape. So in 2015, I set up my own imprint called Page Screen Books. I was experimenting with print-on-demand services at the time. This is where you upload a PDF to a platform such as Blurb or Lulu and order a single copy to check that it's okay. Then if people want to buy a copy of your book, they order it online, the book gets printed and delivered to them without you having to do anything. I had an exhibition of 12 books I made using a range of platforms and processes in 2014. You can find it on my website under exhibitions. It's called Books on Demand. And someone pointed out that I was basically a small press. So I made a section on my website, and that's all it took for me to become a publisher. I author, co-author, edit, design, and publish books in small multiples. The technology, print-on-demand platforms, a website, the software I use to write, edit, design the books, and social media to promote them, allows me to perform all of the roles within a publishing house. It's exhausting. I'm terrible at the promotion side of things. But this is the way that a networked environment changes the way that information is produced and shared. There's a democratization of what is and can be published and distributed. So this is, I guess, also an experiment that you would unkindly describe as a vanity press, where there's nobody else in the process, so no one can say, do you really think that that's worth making a book about? Is that worthy of being printed? Are you aware that your writing is not very good in this section? Or perhaps you need someone to help you edit and refine your ideas. I get to do whatever I want, however I want, and put it out there. This is just in my experimental play though. In other areas, I'm also looking at how, as a designer, I might work in an unusual way on commercial or at least public projects. So this is a different experiment that I wanted to talk through. This is called Laced Narratives, and this was a collaboration between myself and the textile maker and scholar Cecilia Heffer. And it's a publication that was made through UTS's ePress. Now, obviously, UTS is called an ePress, and what you're looking at on the screen is a printed book. And what I was doing here was trying to play around with how we might actually start to talk about practitioner research in design, where designers conduct research through making. How could we communicate the processes that go on there in a way other than is conventional, which is publishing in scholarly journals? So I actually approached Cecilia to do this book because I'd heard her talk about her practice as a textile maker, and I found it fascinating. So to start with, I spent 2 years in a slow conversation with Cecilia. It was many conversations in many different places, but I made studio visits and documented her work in progress. I took photos, I took videos. Chris Keynes, who you can see in the center there, came and did a lot of the video and audio recording for us. I attended her exhibitions, and sat with her in her studio, just watching how she worked and talking about how she did what she did, in order to build an understanding so I could help her visualize and visually communicate her process. In the bottom left, you can see hands in what looks like a bathtub, and they are in fact in a bathtub. Part of what Cecilia does is creates original digital printed fabrics, cuts them up, pins them onto a substrate, a backing, which is water soluble, She sews them together using lines on her sewing machine. It takes a very long time. And then she immerses it in her bathtub so the water-soluble substrate dissolves. She pulls it out, irons it flat, and then she has this incredible reverse lace. She makes it in great lengths, and a lot of her processes and how she speaks about them are fascinating. But you would never get that by reading a bit of writing about what it is she's doing. You need to see the fabrics being made, and you need to be able to touch them. Which is why in the final book, as you can see in the bottom right, there's a hand holding an insert. I looked at how I might actually put things on page in the printed book, put things on screen in a video we made, and with audio, to actually explain what is a very complicated process. In the final book, there were also bits of fabric that she made, so you can touch and understand the materiality of what it is she's made. So in the end, we came up with a hybrid publication. There's a limited edition monograph. That's the book that you can see there, and that has the fabric swatches in it. There were 10 of them made, and they were either given to or sold to public libraries, so anyone could come and visit the book and touch the material fabric. There's a documentary video that goes for 7 minutes, which shows Cecilia's process. She talks through her inspiration and how she actually makes the lace, and then we see it in an installation in Poland. And then there's a print-on-demand version. So if you can't get to one of the libraries to look at the print book, you can order one, but there's also a PDF that's free to download from the UTS library. So what was my role in this, other than asking Cecilia to do a book with me, designing the book and taking care of the production? Some of it was also being able to spend the time talking to Cecilia, being with her and thinking about her process and what she did. For example, here, the image on the left is one of the final lace works, and the image on the right is a little montage that I put together of a whole bunch of Cecilia's visual inspiration, which she took from walks along Wambarrel Beach in New South Wales. And so looking at Cecilia's visual inspiration, I could see what was happening in her final works, and I wanted to be able to share that with other people. As a visual communicator, I understood that we could put these things together and tell a kind of complex story about how Cecilia's ideas and influences come about. Likewise, there was a little pile of rocks on the window in Cecilia's studio, and I really liked them, and I said, "What are these?" And she said, "Well, actually, every time I go for walks on beaches with friends, I collect a rock to remember the walk. And so each of these rocks has a name. It's named after the person that she walked with. And if you see that piece of lacework on the other side, you can see where the rocks became an influential part of this piece of lace making." That was a story that Cecilia hadn't thought to include, but in talking to me in her space, she realized it was novel and amusing and definitely needed to be put in the book. The other thing that came up was that Cecilia's writing her doctoral thesis. She's almost at the end now. And so a lot of the writing she was doing about her work was very academic. She's framing this as research, and she's making claims to disciplinary knowledge in the way she writes. But Cecilia is also a really fantastic storyteller. And often when we're having conversations, I'd say, "Oh, that's a great one. We've got to put that in the book." So what we ended up doing was figuring out a kind of device that we used where if Cecilia was telling an anecdote that I thought was really fun and interesting and opened up new ways of understanding or thinking about her practice, we included it in the text, but we used a pin and a photograph of a pin that I scanned in to kind of pin this little italic section that worked as an anecdote that sat alongside the more scholarly writing. And here you can see in that artist's book, the limited edition that we did, a range of different samples of the lacework that she made. Because I think to understand her process, you need to watch her making the lace, which you can do through the video. You need to read the kind of insights that she had through making and how she contextualizes her work as research. but you also need to touch the final material because that's where it's surprising and innovative in the textile field. So this was a really interesting example of me working not just as a designer, but also someone who could come in and understand how you might collect and put together different types of information or material to tell the story about a research process, about a design practice in an unusual or unexpected way, and in a way that was particularly appropriate to that practice. So I'm going to end this seminar now. We've been talking about the future of publishing and what that might mean. And so I'll leave some questions for you. Does it matter if we can or can't define what a book is in a digital age? Does it matter if we call something a book or an app or a game or an interactive experience? I'm going to answer that a little bit from my perspective that yes, I do think it matters because how we name these things is how people expect to interact with them. So what is the experience that we're trying to give readers or users in the content that we're designing? And how do we help them understand what we expect of them if we expect them to do something other than read words on a page in a way they've been taught to do since they were children? So what does the future of publishing mean for designers? What else could we be doing other than the conventional design tasks assigned to a publication designer? Thank you for your time.